Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel, English with Ethan. Today we are going to start a powerful and easy to understand journey through the history of the USA. If you are learning English, this is the best way to learn both English and knowledge about the world. We will explain everything in simple English so you can listen, understand, and improve your skills every day. In this series, we will explore the story of how the United States of America was born, how it grew, and how it became one of the most powerful countries in the world. This is part 1 of our 6-part series, so stay with us until the end. Now let's begin. Part 1. The Land Before the USA. Life before 1492. Long before the United States existed. Long before there were cities, airports, highways, or tall buildings. There were only people living on the land, and they were called the Native Americans. Who were the first people in America? Thousands of years ago, people came to North America from Asia. They walked across a land bridge that connected Asia and Alaska. These people became the first Americans. They spread across the land. They built homes. They hunted animals. They grew crops. They lived close to nature and respected the earth. They did not speak English. They had their own languages, cultures, and ways of life. There were many different Native American tribes like the Cherokee, Navajo, Sioux, and Apache. Each tribe had its own traditions. Some lived in forests, some lived in deserts, some lived near rivers or mountains. They used wood, stone, and animal skins to make homes. They made tools, clothes, and food by hand. They lived simple, peaceful lives for thousands of years. What did they believe? Native Americans believed in the spirit of nature. They believed the earth was their mother. They gave thanks for the sun, the moon, the rivers, the wind, and the animals. They had deep respect for life and for the world around them. They taught their children through stories. They did not write books. They shared knowledge by speaking. Their traditions were rich and beautiful. But everything began to change in the year 1492. A new world is discovered. In 1492, a man named Christopher Columbus sailed across the ocean from Europe. He was looking for a new way to go to India, but instead, he found a land that was new to Europeans. He landed on islands near America, and soon, many other Europeans started coming too, from countries like Spain, France, and England. These people came looking for gold, land, and new life. They built colonies. A colony is a place where people from another country come to live and take control. These European settlers brought with them new animals, new tools, and also many problems. They brought diseases that Native Americans had never seen before. Many Native people got sick and died. The settlers also took land and started fighting with Native tribes. This was the beginning of many hard years for the original people of America. The English come to America. In the early 1600s, people from England began to build settlements. One of the first and most famous was Jamestown, built in 1607 in what is now Virginia. Life was very hard. There was little food. The winters were cold. Many people died. But still, they did not give up. More English people came and built more colonies. Over time, 13 colonies were made along the East Coast. These colonies were still part of England. The people followed English laws and paid taxes to the King of England. But slowly, the people started thinking, why are we sending money to a king far away? Why can't we make our own laws and live our own way? This small idea of freedom and self-rule would grow into something much bigger. Part 2. The birth of the United States. Fighting for freedom, 1600s to 1783. In Part 1, we learned how Native Americans lived peacefully before the Europeans arrived. Then, settlers from England built colonies along the East Coast. These 13 colonies were growing fast, but life was not easy. Let's now understand how these colonies became a new and free country. The United States of America. Life in the 13 colonies. By the early 1700s, more and more people came to the colonies. They came from England, Ireland, Germany, and many other parts of Europe. Some came to escape war. Some came to escape hunger. Others wanted a better life. People built farms, towns, and businesses. Children went to small schools. Some people became blacksmiths, teachers, farmers, and merchants. Life was busy, but people worked hard. But they still had to follow the rules of the British king. Even though these people lived far away in America, they still had to pay taxes to the King of England. The king and the British Parliament made laws, but the colonists had no voice in those decisions. That made them angry. They began to say, "No taxation without representation." This means, we don't want to pay taxes if we don't have a say in the government. Trouble with Britain begins. In 1765, the British government passed the Stamp Act. It said that all paper, newspapers, legal papers, even playing cards, had to have a special stamp, which people had to pay for. This made many people very angry. People began to protest. Some refused to buy British goods. Some people held meetings. Some even attacked British tax collectors. Then, in 1773, something big happened. The Boston Tea Party. A group of American colonists called the Sons of Liberty dressed up as Native Americans. They boarded British ships in Boston and threw boxes of tea into the water. They were protesting the tea tax. This shocked the British government. In response, Britain sent more soldiers to America. They tried to control the colonies with strict laws. But the American people were tired of being ruled from far away. The American Revolution begins. In 1775, a war started between the American colonies and Great Britain. This was called the American Revolutionary War. The first battles were fought in Lexington and Concord near Boston. American farmers and townspeople picked up guns to fight. They were called Minutemen because they were ready to fight in a minute. This was not just a fight for land or money. It was a fight for freedom, a fight for independence. A powerful idea. We want to be free. In 1776, something historic happened. A group of leaders met in Philadelphia. These leaders were called the Founding Fathers. They included George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and others. On July 4th, 1776, they wrote and signed a document called the Declaration of Independence. In this document, they said, "We believe that all men are created equal, that they have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." They told the world, "We are no longer part of Britain. We are a free and independent country, the United States of America." This was a bold and dangerous move. Britain was the most powerful country in the world at that time, but the Americans believed in their dream. George Washington, a true leader. The Americans needed a strong leader in the war. That leader was George Washington. He was a brave and wise general. He led the American army with courage and patience. His soldiers were often cold, hungry, and had few weapons. But they never gave up. The war lasted many years. There were many battles. Many people died. But slowly, the Americans started to win. Finally, in 1781, the American army won a big victory at the Battle of Yorktown. British General Cornwallis surrendered. The war was over. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed. Britain agreed that the United States was now a free and independent country. A new nation is born. Now the hard work began. The war was over, but the new country needed rules. The leaders wrote a plan for the new government. It was called the Constitution of the United States. It was signed in 1787. It gave the people the power to vote, choose leaders, and have laws that were fair. George Washington became the first president of the United States in 1789. He helped shape the country. He showed the world that America was ready to lead. The dream begins. The new country was full of hope. People wanted to build farms, schools, and homes. They wanted freedom, peace, and happiness. The journey was just beginning. The United States was no longer just 13 colonies. It was now a nation of dreamers. People who believed that with hard work, anything is possible. Part 3. The Growing Nation. Expansion, Struggles, and Dreams. 1783 to 1860. In Part 2, we learned how the 13 colonies fought for their freedom and created the United States of America. The war was over, but building a strong and united country had just begun. Now let's see how America grew, and how it faced both great opportunities and deep struggles. A land of hope and opportunity. After winning independence in 1783, the American people were full of dreams. They believed they could build a better life, a life of freedom, hard work, and peace. Farmers started planting more crops. Merchants opened shops. Towns began to grow into cities. America was a young country, full of energy. But the nation was still small, only 13 states on the East Coast. Beyond the Mississippi River, there were huge lands, forests, mountains, rivers, deserts, and Native American tribes who had lived there for centuries. Many Americans began to look westward. They said, "Let's explore more. Let's grow. Let's build the future." The Louisiana Purchase. A giant step forward. In 1803, something big happened. President Thomas Jefferson made a deal with France. The United States bought a large piece of land called the Louisiana Territory. It was massive. It doubled the size of the country. This was called the Louisiana Purchase. Now, America stretched from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. People were excited. They packed their bags, loaded their wagons, and started moving west. They faced danger, wild animals, tough weather, rough lands. But they believed in the American dream. Lewis and Clark. The great adventure President Jefferson wanted to know what was in the new land. So he sent two brave explorers, Lewis and Clark, to lead an expedition in 1804. With the help of a Native American woman named Sacagawea, they crossed rivers, climbed mountains, and wrote about new plants, animals, and people they met. Their journey took more than 2 years. When they returned, Americans knew more about the land and were inspired to keep moving west. A divided dream. Slavery in America. While some Americans were dreaming of new lands, others were still living in darkness. One of the biggest problems in early America was slavery. In the southern states, many rich landowners used African slaves to work on cotton and tobacco farms. These slaves had no freedom, no pay, and no rights. They were treated as property, not people. In the northern states, more and more people began to say, "Slavery is wrong. All people should be free." This difference between North and South created tension. People started to argue. Some wanted to end slavery, others wanted to keep it. This would later lead to a terrible war. But we'll talk about that in the next part. Inventions that changed lives. In the early 1800s, America also saw great inventions that made life easier. The cotton gin, invented by Eli Whitney, helped clean cotton faster. The steamboat allowed people and goods to travel by river more quickly. Railroads started to spread, connecting cities and towns. The telegraph allowed people to send messages across long distances. These inventions brought people closer, helped businesses grow, and made America more connected. New states, new challenges. As the country expanded, more states were added: Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and many more. But each new state brought a big question. Will this state allow slavery or not? This question caused arguments in Congress, the group of leaders who made laws. Some leaders tried to find a balance, making deals to keep peace. But the problem was growing. Native Americans lose their land. As more settlers moved west, Native Americans were forced to move from their homes. The U.S. government made many unfair deals and forced tribes to move far away. One of the saddest stories was the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. The Cherokee people were forced to leave their land in Georgia and walk over 1,000 miles to a new area. Many died from cold, hunger, and sickness. It was a dark time in American history. The Gold Rush. A new dream. In 1848, gold was discovered in California. People from all over America, and even other countries, rushed to California, hoping to become rich. This time was called the Gold Rush. Towns grew quickly. Businesses opened. California became very important to the U.S. and became a state in 1850. But the dream of gold was not easy. Many people didn't find any. Life was hard. Still, the gold rush showed the American spirit: hope, courage, and belief in a better tomorrow. The struggle between North and South grows by the 1850s. The U.S. had many new states. But the fight between slave states, mostly in the South, and free states, mostly in the North, was getting worse. One powerful voice was a man named Frederick Douglass, a former slave who escaped and became a great speaker. He said, "I know what slavery feels like. It must end." Another voice was Harriet Tubman, who helped hundreds of slaves escape using the Underground Railroad, a secret path to freedom. Books, speeches, and protests filled the country. The people were divided, and soon everything would explode into a civil war. Part 4. The American Civil War and Rebuilding the Nation, 1861 to 1877. In the last part, we saw how America grew rapidly after gaining independence. New states were added, people moved west, inventions changed lives, and dreams were rising. But at the same time, deep problems were growing, especially over slavery. These problems finally led to one of the darkest and most painful times in American history: the Civil War. Let's now understand how this war started, what happened during it, and how America tried to heal and rebuild afterward. The nation breaks apart. By 1860, the United States was deeply divided. The northern states were mostly against slavery. People in the North lived in cities, worked in factories, and believed in freedom and change. The southern states, on the other hand, depended on farming. They used slaves to work in cotton fields. Many people in the South believed slavery was necessary for their economy. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, Southern states were afraid he would end slavery. So, one by one, 11 Southern states left the United States. They formed their own country called the Confederate States of America. The rest of the country, led by Lincoln, was called the Union. America was no longer one country. It was broken in two. The Civil War begins, 1861. In April 1861, the first shots of the Civil War were fired at Fort Sumter in South Carolina. The war had begun. It was not just a war between North and South. It was a war about freedom versus slavery, unity versus separation, old ways versus new dreams. Men from both sides joined the army. They believed they were fighting for what was right. But the war was hard, bloody, and painful. Over 600,000 people died, more than in any other American war. Life during the war. Soldiers lived in rough conditions. They walked for miles every day, ate simple food like hard bread and dried meat, and slept outside in the cold. Mothers, wives, and children waited at home, worried about their loved ones. Some women even helped in the war, working as nurses, sewing uniforms, and cooking for soldiers. One brave woman, Clara Barton, cared for wounded soldiers during battles. Later, she started the American Red Cross. Abraham Lincoln's leadership. President Abraham Lincoln was a wise, calm, and strong leader. He didn't want to destroy the South. He wanted to save the nation and bring it back together. In 1863, he gave one of the most famous speeches in American history, the Gettysburg Address. He said, "A government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." That speech gave people hope. The Emancipation Proclamation. Also in 1863, Lincoln made a bold decision. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation, a paper that said all slaves in the rebel states were free. This changed the war. Now the fight wasn't just to save the Union. It was also a fight to end slavery forever. Many African Americans joined the Union Army after this. They were ready to fight for their freedom, their future, and their families. The end of the war, 1865. After 4 long years of battle, the Union finally won. In April 1865, the Southern General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The war was over. America was one country again. But the cost was high. Cities were destroyed, families were broken, and the South was in ruins. The assassination of Lincoln. Just a few days after the war ended, a terrible tragedy happened. President Abraham Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth, a man who supported the South. Lincoln died the next morning. The whole country cried. Even people who once disagreed with him now saw how great and kind he was. He had led the country through its hardest time, rebuilding the nation. The Reconstruction Era. After the war, the U.S. entered a new period called Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877. The goal was to 1. Rebuild the South. 2. Bring the Southern states back to the Union. 3. Help former slaves live free lives. But it was not easy. New laws were made. The 13th Amendment ended slavery forever. The 14th Amendment gave citizenship to all people born in the U.S., including former slaves. The 15th Amendment gave black men the right to vote. These were powerful steps forward. Struggles after freedom. Even though slavery ended, Life was still very hard for African Americans. Many faced racism, unfair treatment, and violence. Some people tried to stop them from voting or getting jobs. A group called the Ku Klux Klan, KKK, used fear and violence to keep black people down. But brave people kept moving forward. They opened schools, churches, and businesses. They believed in freedom, education, and faith. New leaders, new changes. During Reconstruction, new leaders came forward. Black men were elected to office for the first time. Schools were opened for both black and white children. Railroads, farms, and towns were rebuilt. But not everyone supported these changes. In 1877, Reconstruction officially ended, and many Southern states passed laws that limited black rights again. Still, the fight for equality had begun, and it would continue for many years. Hope for the future. The Civil War and Reconstruction were times of great pain, but also of great courage. Americans had learned, freedom must be protected, unity must be valued. Change takes time, but it is possible. The dream of a better America did not die. It grew stronger. Part 5. The Rise of Industry and Immigrants. America's New Era, late 1800s to early 1900s. After the difficult years of the Civil War and Reconstruction, the United States entered a new period full of big changes. This time was called the Industrial Revolution, a time when the country changed from mostly farms and small towns to big cities filled with factories, machines, and new inventions. This part of American history is very important because it shaped the modern country we know today. From farms to factories. Before the Civil War, most Americans lived in the countryside and worked as farmers. After the war, things began to change very quickly. New machines and inventions helped people work faster and produce more goods. Factories were built everywhere. These factories made steel, clothes, tools, and many other things. Cities like Chicago, New York, and Detroit grew very fast because many factories were there. People moved from farms to cities to find work. This was called urbanization, when more people live in cities than in the countryside. Big business and famous entrepreneurs. During this time, some people became very rich by starting big companies. They were called entrepreneurs. Some famous businessmen were Andrew Carnegie. He built a huge steel company and became one of the richest men in the world. John D. Rockefeller. He created a big oil company called Standard Oil. J.P. Morgan. He was a powerful banker who helped many businesses grow. These men changed America's economy. They created many jobs, but also had a lot of power and control over industries. People called them captains of industry, or sometimes robber barons, depending on who you asked. New inventions changed lives. The Industrial Revolution brought many new inventions that changed how people lived and worked. The telephone, invented by Alexander Graham Bell, helped people talk to each other over long distances. The light bulb, invented by Thomas Edison, made it possible to have light at night and work longer hours. The steam engine and later the internal combustion engine powered trains, ships, and cars, making transportation faster and easier. These inventions helped America grow faster than ever before. The Great Wave of Immigration. Many people from other countries wanted to come to America during this time. They came hoping to find jobs, freedom, and a better life. This period is called the Great Wave of Immigration. Millions of people came from countries like Italy, Ireland, Germany, Poland, and many others. They arrived mostly at Ellis Island in New York, the busiest immigration station in the country. Life was not easy for these new immigrants. Many lived in crowded, poor neighborhoods called tenements. They worked long hours in factories for low pay. But they were hopeful. They wanted to build new lives for themselves and their children. Challenges of a changing nation. With so many new people and rapid changes, America faced many problems. Overcrowded cities had dirty water, poor sanitation, and disease. Workers' rights were limited. Many people, including children, worked in dangerous factories with low wages. There were no laws to protect workers or control working hours. Rich business owners had a lot of power, but poor workers struggled to survive. The rise of labor unions. Because of these problems, workers began to organize themselves to fight for better conditions. These groups were called labor unions. Unions worked to get higher wages, shorter working hours, safer workplaces, end to child labor. One famous union was the American Federation of Labor, AFL, led by Samuel Gompers. Unions often held strikes, times when workers stopped working to demand changes. Sometimes these strikes led to violence, but they also helped improve life for many workers over time. New laws and government changes. As problems grew, the government started to change how it worked with businesses and workers. Laws were passed to control big companies, called trusts, to stop them from being too powerful. The Sherman Antitrust Act, 1890, was one such law to break up big monopolies. The government began to inspect food and medicine to keep people safe after terrible discoveries about bad products. Presidents like Theodore Roosevelt became known as trust busters because they fought big companies to protect ordinary people. Cultural growth and new ideas. This era was also rich in culture, art, and new ideas. Writers like Mark Twain wrote stories about life in America. New music and theaters grew in big cities. Ideas about science, education, and democracy spread. Public schools expanded, and more children learned to read and write. People believed that education and hard work could help anyone achieve success. This idea was called the American Dream. America's role in the world grows. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, the United States also began to look beyond its borders. It started to get involved in other countries' affairs and expanded its influence. America fought the Spanish-American War in 1898, gaining territories like Puerto Rico and the Philippines. The country built a strong navy and started building the Panama Canal to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. America wanted to be a leader in trade and politics worldwide. Summary: this time in history showed how America transformed from a mostly farming country to a powerful industrial nation. It welcomed millions of immigrants who helped build its cities and factories. It faced big challenges but worked hard to solve them through unions and laws. The dreams of freedom and opportunity continued to inspire people, shaping the future of the country. Part 6. America in the 20th Century. Wars, change, and becoming a superpower. The 20th century was a time of great change for the United States. It was a time full of challenges, struggles, and incredible growth. America became one of the most powerful countries in the world. In this part, we will learn about important events like the World Wars, the Great Depression, the fight for civil rights, and how America became a global leader. The early 1900s. Progress and problems. At the start of the 20th century, America was still growing. Many people lived in cities, and factories were everywhere. Technology was improving. Cars, airplanes, and electricity made life easier for many. But not everything was good. Many people still lived in poverty, especially immigrants and African Americans. Workers wanted better pay and safer jobs. Women were fighting for the right to vote, which they finally won in 1920. This period was called the Progressive Era, when many leaders tried to fix problems caused by big businesses and unfair treatment. They passed laws to improve working conditions, protect the environment, and give more power to voters. World War I. America joins the fight. In 1914, World War I began in Europe. At first, the United States stayed neutral and did not join the war. But in 1917, America entered the war on the side of the Allies, countries like Britain, France, and Russia. The war was very hard and changed the world. Millions of soldiers died, and many countries faced destruction. America's role in the war helped it gain respect and power around the world. After the war, President Woodrow Wilson tried to create a peaceful future through the League of Nations. But the U.S. Senate did not approve joining it. America returned to focusing on its own growth and problems. The Roaring Twenties, boom and bust. The 1920s are known as the Roaring Twenties because it was a time of economic growth and fun. People bought cars, radios, and new household appliances. Jazz music became popular, and new styles of dance and clothing emerged. But underneath the fun, there were problems. Many farmers were poor, and wealth was not shared equally. People borrowed too much money to buy stocks, shares in companies. This risky behavior led to disaster. The Great Depression. Hard times for America. In 1929, the stock market crashed, causing the Great Depression, the worst economic crisis in American history. Banks failed, businesses closed, and millions of people lost their jobs. Families struggled to buy food and pay for housing. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected in 1932 and created a program called the New Deal to help America recover. The New Deal created jobs, built roads and schools, and helped farmers and workers. Although it took many years, the New Deal helped America slowly get back on its feet. The Great Depression showed the importance of government helping its people during hard times. World War II. America becomes a superpower. In 1939, World War II began. At first, the U.S. tried to stay neutral, but after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, America joined the war. This war was even bigger and more destructive than the first. Millions of Americans fought in Europe, Asia, and Africa. The country produced weapons, planes, and ships faster than ever before. World War II ended in 1945 with the defeat of Germany, Italy, and Japan. America emerged as a superpower, one of the strongest and most influential nations on Earth. The Cold War. Competition with the Soviet Union. After World War II, America entered a long period of tension with the Soviet Union, called the Cold War. The two countries never fought directly, but they competed in many ways: military, space, technology, and politics. The U.S. worked to stop the spread of communism. This led to conflicts like the Korean War and the Vietnam War. The Cold War lasted for decades and shaped much of the world's politics. The Civil Rights Movement. Fighting for equality. During the 1950s and 1960s, many African Americans and others fought against racial discrimination and segregation. They wanted equal rights, fair treatment, and the end of laws that kept black people separate from white people. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. used peaceful protests and powerful speeches to demand change. Important laws were passed, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which helped end legal segregation and protect voting rights. This movement inspired other groups, including women and Native Americans, to fight for their rights too. Social change and modern America. After the 1960s, America continued to change. Technology grew quickly. Computers, the internet, and space travel became part of everyday life. People fought for many causes: women's rights, environmental protection, and LGBTQ+ rights. America became more diverse, with people from all over the world living and working together. The country faced challenges like wars in the Middle East, economic ups and downs, and political disagreements. But the idea of freedom, democracy, and opportunity stayed strong. Summary: a journey of growth and change. The 20th century was a time of great change for America. From struggles like the Great Depression and wars, to the fight for civil rights and new technology, the country grew stronger and more united. America became a leader in the world, inspiring many with its ideas of freedom and hope. The journey was not easy, but the spirit of hard work and belief in a better future helped shape the nation. Thank you for watching this story of the history of the USA. If you liked this video, please subscribe, like, and share. See you tomorrow with another exciting topic. Goodbye, my friends.